Thank you very much indeed. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the meeting of North Norfolk District Council Overview and Scrutiny Committee on Wednesday, the 14th of May, 2025. And the first item on our agenda is to receive apologies for absence. And by my count, we have no apologies for absence today. So well done for a full house. As we discovered, we're one short of a front row seat for a full house. Right, okay, thank you. And therefore, we have no substitutes today. Item 3 is public questions and statements. I'm not aware of any. Thank you. Item 4 is minutes, and these would be the minutes of the meeting held on the 9th of April, and you will have noticed that we don't have the minutes in our pack today. So I'll hand over to Officer Jordan just to give us an explanation of why that is the case.
Thank you, Chair. I do apologise, the minutes aren't here. They were intended to follow the agenda, but as I've mentioned to members previously, we've had some resource issues and we are going to work on this to ensure that the minutes are with you at the next committee meeting. So apologies.
Okay, so they will be carried over until the June meeting, and we will sign them off at that time. Thank you very much. Right. Item 5 is declarations of interest. Any declarations of interest in connection with today's business? No? I take it that's not a declaration of interest that's going on there? No? Thank you. Item 6 is the items of urgent business. I'm not aware of. Thank you. Item 7, petitions from members of the public. Again, I'm not aware of any. And item 8, consideration of any matter referred to the committee by a member. I am not aware of any. Item 9 is responses of the council or the cabinet to the committee reports or recommendations. Do we have any to report today? No, I'm not aware of any. Thank you. Moving then to item 10, and item 10 is to report the progress implementing the corporate plan for 23-27 and the action plan 24-25 to the end of Q4, which is the 31st of March. And we have, I believe, Officer Pims and Councillor Fredericks. Thank you. Right, I will hand over to Councillor Fredericks to introduce this item of business. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody, members and officers. It's lovely to see you on this lovely day. Here before you, we have the progress of the corporate plan, items completed and stuff to celebrate as well, I think is a really important point on here. And our thanks goes to officers that have been working really hard to complete these tasks. So I'm happy for any questions. Thank you.
Officer Hems, anything you wish to add to that?
Nothing further at this stage, Chair. I'm happy to assist in any other questions.
Thank you. Right, open to questions. Who wants to kick off? Councillor Penfold.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, everyone. From the second row here. So thank you for the report and the updated action plan. Very good. And thanks for adding the previous RAG status at the far right end there. I think it's quite helpful to, I think we asked for that, and thank you for doing it. So just a couple of questions, if I may, to kick us off. So I'm just looking at action point 27 on page 17. That's my first one. So the action's talking about the Fakenham banking hub. But the comments are sort of more focused around North Walsham. And obviously success we've had there in North Walsham, which is very welcome. But the action relates to Fakenham. So could you just give us an update on what's happening in Fakenham and progress there? Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, I thought you were waving. I don't know. Have you had would you like to go on Fakenham? Because that's okay. I was just wondering if you had any input as well on that. Oh, right. Okay. So the success of North Walsham and Holt has been fantastic with the banking hubs. We're still negotiating with Fakenham at the moment. So any support would be welcome from ward members on that as well. So writing letters or getting involved in that, perhaps writing to the business development team, giving your support would be helpful, because I think that was paramount in bringing the others forward. So yes, we're still working on that. It's still quite a new concept, but we are actively pursuing that.
Councillor Cushing.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Councillor Fredericks. As you'll know, it's something that I've raised often in the cabinet meetings, and I did last time round. And I made obviously I made a point about the fact that, as Councillor Penfold has rightly said, it's focused on Fakenham, and the update is focused on North Walsham. So I've questioned why, and then previously at Cabinet, I questioned why it's ragged status green when it talks about establishing a hub in Fakenham by September of last year, which has clearly been missed. So that's one element to it. Subsequent to the cabinet meeting, I discussed this with Jerome Mayhew, who's our MP in Fakenham, who's also been active in this area, and he said that you cannot set a banking hub up in Fakenham because it already still has a nationwide building society there that will take cash deposits from residents. So all you can get is something called Cash Access UK, because Nationwide does not take deposits from businesses, whereas Cash Access UK would do. And what he's been doing is trying to lobby to get the post office to set a branch up in Fakenham, because we've only have a temporary one somewhere. And the post office then could actually have the Cash Access UK in as part of the facility that they offer. And I think Cash Access UK offers something like £100,000 in order to do that. So the feedback I would give, I think the objective is going to be fed into next year, ought to be rewritten around that. The other thing I'd also question on this is, this is not within the gift of this council to deliver a banking hub. All you can do is contribute to the debate to this, which is obviously much appreciated in the town. But I suppose the question I would have on this is, should it really be there in that sense, because it's outside, it's outside your powers to do that, or if it is or should it make this actually you're in a process of being a lobby, just adding your voice to that debate, which obviously is helpful.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Cushing. I mean, that's really great information, and I'm sure if you offer that support and information to the business development team and the MP, that would be great to have support from ward members as well on that, and to lobby. And you're quite right, a lot of this is about lobbying the government, and that's what we do a lot. But we're really interested in supporting the business community, and that's why we want to get involved, even if we can't directly get involved. Let's just put our collective shoulders to the wheel and push things forward. And I think that's definitely the role of every single member, to get involved in this and to see it through. And it's an ongoing piece of work. We're hoping, as you say, with that new information, we could maybe lobby for that. So that would be wonderful. If you want to have a chat with Councillor Toy on that, I'm sure he'd be really grateful.
I would do my colleague as well, Councillor, which you're about to come in, because I know, Councillor, because you've been heavily involved and it's actually in your area, along with Councillor Punchard. So I'll hand over to you if I may.
No, just to add on, Wendy, to what Christopher said, that I have been meeting Jerome Mayhew and got the same information. I spoke to him on Saturday, and next week I'm meeting the Mayor and the business development team to discuss this and other funding issues for Bakenham Town Centre. So,
Yes, thank you, councillor, because that's exactly, you know, the sort of support that's needed. So thank you.
Councillor Penfolder, I'm just conscious that I didn't come back to you and ask if you were satisfied on that matter. Or
very
whether
much,
you had a
thank you.
supplementary.
Yes, no, and defer to obviously the greater knowledge that the Fakenham members have on that, and thank you for that. So I did have a second question, if that's okay.
Well, before you do,
Yes.
actually, just before you move on, I guess I would be interested to hear maybe a little more. When you gave your answer, you said you were working on that, and so are you able to tell us anything more than lobbying? What else might be going on?
That would be a matter for that particular portfolio holder, but I understand it's still within the hands, as councillor Vickers quite rightly said, that they're still working, still lobbying, and it's thank you so much for meeting with them as well. So yeah, that'd be fantastic.
So are you any the wiser, Officer Hems?
I can find some further information for you and provide that detail in writing if that's okay. I don't have it to hand. You'll appreciate that that although I'm the author of this report, it covers a wide range.
It does.
Of all of the actions within the action plan, etc. So I don't have the precise detail, not every single one of them, but if you're comfortable, I will come back in writing.
Indeed. It would just be good to have an understanding of. We do appreciate that you don't have a direct handle on the lever. So therefore, if you're not able to do that, what else are you able to do? And other than those efforts that have been made elsewhere, what are we able to do as a district council?
I do know that clearly within that, within the process around banking hubs, there are a number of criteria that have to be met. And so it is about understanding those criteria, ensuring that we're positioning our arguments, etc., to try and ensure those criteria can be met. But I have no doubt that what was said around I have no reason to question the position around, if there is a bank, i.e. or a building society that doesn't meet the threshold. And so if that's the case, we need to look at how we work around those and some of the other areas that we can develop. But I'm happy to come back on those.
Please.
Clearly, when this was set, it was around Fakenham. I think, there has been an awful lot of work as banks, etc., have withdrawn from the high street, or increasingly withdraw from the high street presence and move their businesses online, with some focus in some of the major towns and cities. The scope of this original objective has been, was broadened to pick up, or was not broadened, but the focus has also been on other towns that have been affected. And I think, that isn't, it is work that continues to ongo, and we will continue to support work wherever we need to in terms of trying to ensure that our residents have access to services in their vicinity without large distance to travel to access banking.
Thank you. Yeah. I've got Councillor Penfold number 2 question.
Thank you. And
then I've got Councillor Housden, Councillor Heinrich, Councillor Holiday. Yes, we'll hold it at that at the moment, and I'll pick up. Yeah, okay.
Lots of questions. And just to follow up Officer Hem's point there, it might be perhaps that the language in the action point is just tweaked a bit, given what Councillor Cushing said about banking hubs perhaps not being possible there at the minute. We might emphasise banking facility rather than hub. But anyway, that's kind of semantics.
I guess just in response, so this is looking back to previous. So this is the summary of what was done in the last action plan. So the language will be relevant to what was happening at that time. Certainly in terms of looking forward, the aim is to ensure that we are the actions will be things that are achievable, or the language reflects by ourselves. They're either achievable by ourselves, deliverable by ourselves as a council, or that the language reflects our ability to influence, etc. moving forward into future iterations of the plan.
I think that would be very useful if we could do that, because I think there is some lack of clarity around what we can achieve and what needs to be achieved, or indeed what is achievable.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sorry.
Can I make a suggestion that obviously Councillor Vickers is involved in this as well. She's very proactive and meeting with the mayor and also the business team. So perhaps that's a mechanism to feed that back. So, you know, being really proactive, which you are being, which is fantastic. You've got an ideal seat to collate that kind of evidence for the moment, for this particular moment.
So your suggestion is what precisely?
Well, perhaps, you know, report back on the meeting that you've had to ONS as well. So it's a collective thing, you know.
Yes, Chairman, if I may, I think, you know, I have some sympathy with Councillor Fredericks on this, because the council uses its undeniable soft power in areas to lobby where it hasn't necessarily got prime responsibility. We are negotiating with a business in the post office, so are things that we cannot say openly in the public domain. But, you know, Councillor Cushing is right that at this present time, we can't have a banking hub because we've got the Nationwide. As far as I'm aware, even though Lloyds is leaving, Nationwide has committed to 2028. So we are where we are. And, you know, a lot of the work has to be soft work behind the scenes and not sort of displayed openly in a public forum like this.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I will get on to my second question now. So just looking at point 40 in the action plan on page 19, if I may, and the comments around we're talking about assets here, and particularly in the officer comment section, the North Norfolk Visitors Centre, which obviously is being advertised to let. So my question is, we did discuss this a few meetings ago, and I recently attended County Museums Committee. So my question is around the physical assets there from that centre, particularly around sort of the deep history coast. And I think we asked before what might happen to them. At County Museums, the possibility was raised that they could go to the Cromer Museum, which is county run. But I'm just wondering if we have an update on what might happen to the rather expensive but very excellent kit that was in the visitor centre. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Penfold. Can I defer to Officer
I
Chief
think the
Executive?
Chief Executive might
Thank
be
you.
able to provide an answer on that. I think he's preparing to give one, so I'm reading you right.
I'm happy to answer that question if that would be helpful. There was a conversation with Norfolk Museum Service. Unfortunately, it was suggested that Cromer Museum couldn't accommodate the audio-visual Deep History Coast infrastructure, and so it has been donated to Sheringham Museum, and the display cabinets for sales and vending have been given to Holt Town Council, who asked whether at the time of the centre closing, they could have some of the leaflet racks for their tourist information centre. So the assets, fixed assets inside, have been distributed in that way.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Comprehensive and straightforward answer. So much appreciated. Thank you.
Good, thank you. Right, okay, moving on then. Councillor Howsden.
Thank you, Chairman. I wonder if we could just look at page 17, item 30. Surely this should go from amber to red rather than anywhere else, because as we know, we've got the hold up on devolution aspects. You know, the main thrust of this item is both energy and water resources, critical infrastructure items, and I accept there is dialogue, but perhaps we could have a little bit more definitive information, not a lot, but on just dialogue, because, you know, we're talking about water resources, we're talking about energy, and our local economy needs both more than it needs anything else.
Would you like to respond on that?
So councillor Housen, what detail would you like?
Well,
on it?
I'd like to know. I mean, continued dialogue doesn't suggest very much to me at all. It just says there's discussions going on, but what are the basis of those discussions? What's the integral elements of those discussions?
So I can speak to this because I'm involved in that as well. So we actually meet with Anglia Water on a quarterly basis and discuss local issues and find out what their proposals are and where their investments are being held and their business plan, which has come forward. I myself have a lot of interest in that within Munsley. And believe me, I'm very robust in the questioning. So it's an ongoing, when we say ongoing, we can't give you a date because it is ongoing. It's like a couple of things on my portfolio. I'm not going to stop talking to housing associations. I'm not going to stop talking to Anglian Water because there's more work to be done. But if you wanted to, I mean, Anglian Water have actually come into ONS before. It might be an idea to bring Anglian Water in.
Yeah, I remember them coming in and suggesting they've got a 9 million investment programme, although their chief exec was getting 3 million. So it would be good to know, well, they're coming in, I understand they're on the schedule, but it really would be good to understand exactly what they're doing, because these discussions with water companies are going throughout the country, not just in North Norfolk. And really the same applies in relation to Bacton, which is a critical infrastructure. So, you know, I just think it's greater detail on two fundamental elements of A, this report, and B, you know, our district in the face of possible devolution. And I just feel in a way that amber should go to red because it's so critical.
If it helps, Anglian Water is listed in our work
Yes.
programme for
Yeah, I
July.
saw. Yeah.
Okay, that would be one of the opportunities
Yeah.
to explore in greater detail.
Fine. Okay.
As for Bacton, the energy hub, we are an integral part of that as well. There's a conference going on about so many abbreviations. East of England Energy Group are having a conference next week, so I will be there and talking to the representatives there. So it's really important that even with LGR and with devolution, that we still have a place at that table because it is our residents. And as I said in Parliament, I don't want £50 for a scout hut if they're going to achieve their goals of bringing hydrogen to the region. I want regeneration for the North Norfolk. So that's still a narrative that I'm very loud and proud about. So that's what's happening. The first injection, I think, of carbon capture has been completed offshore. So
Yeah.
that's another element of what Bacton are doing. Again, you know, it's something that we can't have direct control of.
No, I appreciate that.
But we can be there at the table lobbying, and that's exactly what we're doing.
Well, I think, you know, the two things you've mentioned there, the regeneration and the fact with Anglian Water, you know, would have been aspects or facets that could just have been dropped in here in a very loose term, just to illustrate the point a bit more, because, you know, they are
First
useful.
officers on that, and perhaps that could be in the next report, because this is obviously, yeah,
Fine.
if it's just about language.
Okay, thank you very much.
And just in terms of the RAG rating or the RAG status of this, so clearly that refers to progress against the objective or the action, and I think whether it becomes more important because of the situation we're in, that's more risk related than to status of the actions that we're taking. So I think from that point of view, the progress that we're making means that the amber progress is being made. It is, you know, there are some areas that need further work, but it's not so far behind or so problematical that we would say that it would be a red status in terms of its progress.
All right, thank you.
All right, okay, thank you. Moving on, Councillor Heinrich.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a couple of points, if I may. Just returning to the banking matters. I think it's just as important as having banking hubs in the towns that we ensure there is an adequate number of free-to-use ATMs. As each bank closes, you lose one. North Walsham, we're going to be left with a couple at Sainsbury's and one up at Waitrose, which is well out of town, as most people know. A lot of our residents, elderly and those of less generous means, depend on cash. They've got to be able to get hold of it somehow. And it's getting more and more difficult. I think part of the discussions on banking hubs must include ensuring that there's sufficient ATMs, preferably in a publicly owned or neo-publicly owned building like a post office, rather than just relying on supermarkets and others to provide that service. Second point, just on item 11, public conveniences. Yes, we've done very well in getting the big refurbishments done. I'm a little concerned that I see no indication of sort of a maintenance and care program on some of those that might regard to be as lesser used: Cart Gap, Sea Pauling, Stalham, do I mention? Probably not. That we need to see a clear program that they will receive some reasonable maintenance, if not if not actual upgrading. I don't see anything there. It almost needs to be satisfied with we've done the big jobs. We'll ignore the others. Okay.
Can I assure the councillor that there is a maintenance programme, and we do have the assistant director in the room. We want to look after our assets, and this is quite a broad overview. To give you that reassurance, I would have thought that probably writing to the assistant director, Dan King, would be a really good idea. But I can assure you that there is always money set aside for the maintenance of these conveniences. And again, I reach out to all the members. If you do see of any problems, please report them. Report them onto property services and they will be dealt with quickly. And I can assure you they are very quick at dealing with those problems in public conveniences, because I've actually been through that process. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think it's just very important as we come into the tourist season that our facilities are as good as they can be. Thank you.
Yes. Just coming back to your first point that you raised with regard to ATMs, I know from first-hand experience in my own ward, when we lost the last bank in Boston, we were left with no ATM effectively other than the post office. And it's only recent, I guess we've been without an ATM. We were without an ATM for quite a long time. And when you consider the tourist traffic in both Wroxham and Boston, depending on access to that kind of money, it does have a significant impact on the local economy, or it can do. And I think one of the lessons that I would identify there is that when that last bank, or when the bank is announcing and preparing to depart, we do, I say we, I'm not talking about necessarily the district council, I'm talking about the broader we, have a duty, I think, to ensure that before that bank departs, that there is an ATM actually in place before they close, if at all possible. That's the kind of objective that would certainly ensure that there isn't that kind of gap where the traders in particular are disadvantaged.
All right, sorry.
So,
Thank you very much for that point, Chair. Yes, of course, that would be ideal. But when we're dealing with multinational companies, it's a very difficult space to work in. And, perhaps that's something Councillor Vickers will take forward as well when she has her negotiations. Didn't the Roys of Wroxham have their cash machine open?
That was closed before.
Oh, right, okay.
So unfortunately, that's how it was. But anyway, that's just a lesson in history. That's a very important point. Whenever we get a situation where a bank is, the last bank is pulling out, it really is important to get that sort of facility back in again. Councillor Holiday.
Thank you, Chair. It's very nice to see this completed action plan for 24-25 with its RAG ratings quite satisfactory. Picking up on Officer Hems's point, I was wondering when we were going to see the action plan for 25-26, and I'd have two observations. One would be, is it possible to make the actions more action outcome focused and not so process. And I would pick up on number 2 as being an example of that, because I think training trains people, but it doesn't actually change their behavior. So I don't know that that would actually, I would call training going to necessarily get to your goals, even though I see that the objective is a training, which again I would say was process, not outcome. And the other question I would have for the action plan for next year would be to make sure that the actions aren't too narrow and compared to the corporate plan objective. For example, I'll draw your attention there for number 5, which your corporate plan objective is very close to my heart, protecting and enhancing the special landscape. But your actual action is basically reducing less herbicide. And I think that's that to me is a very, very small percentage of what we need to do to protect the landscape. And so I wouldn't call that, I would call it out of sync with the actual objective, which is massive, and the actual action is tiny. And I don't see that it doesn't work for me that we're actually trying to achieve our goal for that. So I would like to see the next action plan with more outcomes and with broader actions that I would be more satisfied would be achieving my goals. Thank you.
Could I ask then, if the committee isn't satisfied with how the report looks, perhaps you could have a workshop that says exactly what you want to see on these reports, because we can't guess at what you want. I think that would be helpful, Chair, is to suggest that and say, what is it that you're actually looking for? Because we've had this conversation for the last 6 years of what do we put in? Is it too much? Is it too little? Ultimately, we want to make it as transparent as we can to the committee and for the committee to make those recommendations. So as a cabinet member, I don't know what you want to see if this isn't it. So perhaps, you could get a workshop together to say, how much detail would you like? What would you like to see? That kind of thing, because we tried to not put too much information in it because we were told it was too information. So I would really, really value a workshop with ONS committee to actually tell me what you want to see in a report, and we're very happy to supply it. And as you can see, I'm here to answer questions and we'll take back information. There's nothing to hide here. So if there's something that you want to see, please design it. Please tell us what you want to see, and then we can accommodate you. Is that fair enough?
It's fair enough in principle. All I would say is that I have heard that call many times over the past couple of years or so. And the essence of it, I think, really, without going into detail, the essence of it is, I think, if I'm paraphrasing correctly, that the actions would be far more beneficial, or that the action plan would be far more beneficial if it was action and outcome focused rather than process driven. So it's that argument about, do you document process or do you document the desired outcomes and perhaps some staging points when you might be achieving that eventual outcome. So it's about how that's presented. And we could have a discussion about it, but I think we will be regurgitating what we've said many times.
I really appreciate that. So, what we would like to see is it on paper. Tell us exactly what you want and we'll give it to you. We're very reasonable like that. But if you were to come together and do a workshop and say, this is what we want to see, this is what we want to see, this is what we want to see, we will give it to you. And a couple of things here, you said about not process driven, but then again, you've asked about, well, what's going on? What's behind the scenes? What's happening? What's the process of it? So I can give you both if you want both, but I can't, I would really rather, because I'm a simple person, put it down what you want and then we will give it to you. Absolutely, not a problem.
I think it's going to always be part of the exchange between the committee and presenting officers and cabinet members, that where an item is in progress but not been achieved, might, particularly if there is some concern around that, it will inevitably take you into, so where are you then in the process of delivering it? But that's a question that the whole purpose of these meetings is to give clarification and to explore, if you like. So we're not, I don't think that, certainly from my own point of view, I wouldn't expect that level of detail to be documented in these reports. Otherwise, they will balloon into something very different. But I think there will always be that exchange where there is where an item, its progress is a matter of interest that will take you inevitably into the process.
And we really, really value that conversation as well.
So
That's why you
that's
have
the kind of
cabinet
thing-
members here. But what I'm saying is, if there is a report that you want, then that's great. We can design it and we'll fill it in.
Chair, I hear Councillor Holliday's request and around outcome focused, etc. Certainly it's something we will reflect on. I think part of the challenge is that in terms of the actions, they quite often include a number of bits within each in order to try and hook things into one action rather than having a number. And in terms of that, they have to be looked at in the round in that respect. I think the other thing is that outcomes are always very difficult to demonstrate in terms of what are the outputs are easy, but outcomes are open to interpretation. And so I think there has been there is a bit where there is a number of measures within there where it is possible to demonstrate we have achieved this as part of that. So we need to just reflect on that and look at how we best serve. I think the report, the report format, we can do whatever you want, as Councillor Fredericks has said. But I think there will be a point at which there's probably a further discussion to be had in terms of what the things look like in terms of those outcomes, outputs, processes.
That's helpful, thank you. I've got Councillor Holliday who wanted to come back, Councillor Howsden and Councillor Cushing. I think one all through it on that point. On this point? Yeah, I think we need to just follow this one. Councillor Holliday.
Just like to follow up on that. Thank you very much. It was more about the actions actually than the reporting. I mean, this report looks fine. It's got detail in it. I'd like some data in it. I'm keen on data. But, if you asked me how I was going to protect the national landscape, it wouldn't be by, reducing pesticides and herbicides is very important, but there's lots of other things. Why aren't we thinking of those as our actions? For example, where are the GRAMS payments going? What are the GRAMS payments achieving? To me, there's some higher level actions that would be a proxy for the objective that we're trying to achieve, which is absolutely exactly what it should be. So it's more about getting the actions right. And then obviously you report against the actions. And if it's outcome process rather than process, we'd be very happy. But I'm not entirely comfortable with all the actions. And I wondered if that's why I was asking, when are we going to see them? And do we have any input to that? It's not so much the report writing, which I don't know what my fellow councillors think. And I don't wonder, is there a recommendation there that we have a oversight of what the actions are going to be for next year and have an input into that?
That was going to be my follow-on point, funnily enough. If we're talking about the action plan for this year, do we have one for next year?
We are going to be continuing the work on this action plan to make sure that we're keeping abreast of things. However, as the briefing that you all attended, we have to be mindful of LGR and devolution. So we have to be really careful on what we can achieve. And it's a changing space. So I think what we're going to do is just carry on with this action plan and exhaust it, and then come out with recommendations and actions for perhaps the next year. But at the moment, we can't do anything until we get a better handle on LGR and Devo.
You use the term, I think. Is that your view, or is that actually what's being agreed? Chief Executive, Mr. Blackstone.
I understand the frustration that some members have in this space. The council agreed a corporate plan for the 4 years of the current administration, May 2023 through to May 2027. I think it did that in July or September 2023 after the full council elections in May 2023. And that set out an ambition for the 4 years in terms of areas of activity that reflected or turned, if you like, the administration's manifesto into a delivery plan. Because of the experience in the previous plan, covering the period 2019 to 2023 and the onset of the pandemic in March 2020 that took huge organisational capacity both here and obviously nationally, we learned that we were setting ourselves up to fail by having a corporate plan that had objectives for a 4-year period that couldn't respond and adapt agilely and flexibly to major events during that 4-year period. So the advice that officers provided in the preparation of this corporate plan was that there should be a 4-year plan with high-level objectives, and then there would be an annual plan that could flex and adapt and respond to changes. And that is what you have. And this report on your agenda today reflects on the achievements of the 24-25 action plan. There was an action plan agreed with priorities for this year, reflecting the emergence of devolution and local government reorganisation, which is now taking up a significant amount of corporate capacity. And that report was presented to Cabinet at its meeting of the 3rd of March. And I haven't been able to look in the time since Councillor Holliday asked her question, but I thought it also came to this committee at your March meeting as well for comment. So there is an action plan that says what will be done or what focus there will be for the next 12 months. And I do recall the leader of the council at one meeting saying we've reduced it to from 44 objectives in 24-25 to 30 objectives in 25-26. I can't quite recall, I'm sorry, which meeting that was at, but I do recall him saying that. So there is a degree of choice in terms of what Councillor Holliday has asked as to what actions they are. And these are things which the administration think is important in terms of moving forward. As Councillor Fredericks has said in responding to an earlier question, I think it was from Councillor Housden, that in terms of water and energy, some of these things don't have a fixed outcome numerically or in time, in that they're an ongoing lobbying, making representations. And we have had meetings with Anglian Water. We are in discussions with partners as that outcome says around an energy plan, which is now being moved into the strategic authority. I can say that Ofwat has published its next 5-year plan, and in that plan, there is reference now to potential desalination plant at Bacton, which would meet both the needs of that site and possibly the wider community moving forward. But that is in a forward time horizon. And in terms of some of the comments made about access to cash and the closure of banks and the establishment of banking hubs, I agree with Councillors Cushing and Vickers about those conversations. The primary legislation is that until the last bank leaves a town, it is not possible for a banking hub to be established. And that is presenting us with some challenges, as is the issue that Councillor Heinrich made around access to cash machines. And we've had that experience in Houghton, and I think a solution has been achieved quite recently by a new cash machine. It is an issue at the present time in Sheringham, where Barclays has now closed. And I think in Fakenham, the cash machine is physically within the nationwide building society, and so it's not available 24/7. So these are all issues which the authority is involved in. But in terms of the outcomes which Councillor Holliday has said about GRAMs, there isn't a measure on that at the moment in the annual action plan. If you would like a report on GRAMs, it is within your gift through this committee to make that request, I think that is outside of the corporate plan and action plan process, because it is something that you are entitled to know and have a deeper understanding of. And if that's something that you want, we can take that away as an action from this meeting, and a report can be provided in that regard.
Thank you. I'm not sure whether your reference to GRAMS was an example. Yeah, I thought so, because I'm aware that GRAMS actually does come back to planning policy and built heritage. So members, not all of this committee, but I'm aware that members do see that kind of information, but it's really a matter of whether some of that would be helpful to populate this. Is a decision to be made at some point. I recognise the point you made, and I recall the conversation with the leader when we reduced the numbers. I think probably what I haven't seen, or I can't recall seeing, is a confirmed new, or if you like, a modified or amended action plan for this current year.
Well, that was in the report of the 3rd of March to the 3rd of March Cabinet. I thought it came to your subsequent ONS meeting. That would those 30 actions would then be populated into the template that you've got, and there would be quarterly reporting of that. So obviously the first report of that would probably be in July, possibly of June. In terms of the detailed response of item 5 around the use of glyphosate, my reading of the objective was that something that we would do on our land holdings. It wasn't to do with the area of high landscape value itself. It was around in our parks and public open spaces in terms of weed control and management, and that we would move away from that through our contractor. But it is in terms of public amenity areas, there is an expectation that there is some weed management or control demonstrated, and we're working with Serco to do that. I believe that they're moving towards a hot foam solution rather than a sprayed chemical solution.
Okay. Thank you. You content with that? Thank you. I've got
I'll be brief.
Councillor Howden and I think Councillor Cushing on this very point.
Yes,
Okay,
yeah, I'll
that's
be brief. Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you. A couple of points really, just picking up on Councillor Holiday. I mean, I think on the action, it is nice to be specific, but if we go back to my point, which is point 30, I do recall the Chief Executive answering when I raised the question about Anglian Water that he'd got a meeting with them. So that sort of follows through rather nicely. I did have at the back of my mind the desalination, which has been, I think, in the press, or I'd read it somewhere anyway, which is just a hint of something more than continued dialogue. And it's that kind of little bit of nuanced information that I think is important if it drops into some of these responses in the comments. It's not a case of process. It's more a case that the outcomes are moving forward. The outcome and the action that we're seeking to get to is moving forward. And it's that definitive nature, I suppose, that I would like to see.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Cushing.
Thank you, Stuart. I'd like to bring it back. I think it's a very worthy point, but to bring back an example, she said, what would you like to look at? So I think I can give you an example of what I think I'd like to look at. So if we look at number 4, which says increase the percentage of household waste collected, which is recycled. Now, that's a really worthy objective, which I'm sure all of us would support. But as it's written, it's actually, at the moment, it's just a woolly aspiration. If you look down there, we don't know what we collect at the moment. So an alternative example would be, so let's say, for example, the council collects 40% recycled waste at the moment. And the specific outcome could be we will aim to collect 45% of household waste by March 2026. Now, I'm just pulling those figures out of the air. Obviously, whatever figure you come up would have to be realistic based on what you can achieve. But at least it's something that is specific, it is measurable, it is timed. That means when you're looking at the RAG status, you can see whether you're making progress against that specific objectives. Then as a committee, we can start to have sensible conversations if you're falling behind that. Now, what could be done? It's not about trying to beat you with a stick or anything. It's just something that helps all of us. They may not be able to do that for everything on there, but it's got something that you can hang your hat on. I think that's what I'd like to see.
Okay, yeah, I can understand that point. I'm just, I'll note that and reflect with officers on that. Also, don't forget that you have portfolio holder reports that come to every full council. So a lot of the information will be in there as well to update you on what we've been doing behind the scenes. So it's really good to read those reports as well. So you've got that knowledge behind you, but I can reflect upon that point. Thank you, Councillor Cushion.
I've got Councillor Boyle and then Councillor Hanke.
Thank you. Mine was a point on action 1, and I know we're looking backwards and not forwards, but I would just like to say how good it was that we've got the local plan moving forward. And I know there's some information come out recently, and I was wondering if that might just be relevant to share. Thank you.
So I was hoping that Councillor Brown could enlighten you on this of all things local plan, because he is the absolute expert on plan and planning policy. So I would suggest that that comes back at the next meeting, and perhaps ask Councillor Brown to fill you in on that. There will be details, I'm sure, in his portfolio report to bring that forward, but I can give you all a written answer, but I'm really not the expert on local plan. It's a dark art, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I was more thinking, if I just come back, I was just more thinking of in general to say that there has been a response from the inspector, and that information will be forthcoming was more what I was looking at,
So-
not the nitty gritty. So if that's correct, I was just.
So yes, we have had a letter from the inspector, and that will the assistant director for planning will be working up the next steps and the information that comes out with it out as a result of that. But you know, there is positive movement towards our local plan adoption, which is really good and very excellent news from our perspective. Obviously that was not available to share when this report was produced, and clearly this is looking at the previous year's activity. But yes, there is some positivity coming forward. I don't want to steal other people's thunder, and I don't want to be in a position where I don't know all of the details in a way that I'm able to share at this current time. But yeah, things are moving forward.
Thank you. That's all I was saying, a general thing, and I know it's gone out to the members of the public as well yesterday, because I received something in the post. Hence my thinking that it would just be something good to share. Although it's slightly looking forward, it's also recognition of what's been going on in the background, as we were saying, the ongoing. Thank you.
I assume your question really was noting the progress that had been made during the reporting period, and that you were mindful that further progress has been made most recently because of that letter from the inspector, and clearly that sets out a lot of the findings that he had reached in the course of his re-examination, and I think it sets a route to a conclusion. I'm not sure that we know precisely when that conclusion will be reached, but it sets out a number of steps that need to be achieved in that in reasonable timescale. So I think one of the assurance that we ought to be able to draw from this is that the local plan is drawing to a conclusion, drawing to a close, with the blessing or with the recommendations, if you like, of the inspector, and it remains for us to complete those and then for full council to sign it off. Right. Okay. Thank you, Councillor Hankins.
I have a question on number 18, page 15. This is the question of the take-up of neighbourhood plans. Now, my question is, how many neighbourhood plans have been approved across the district? That's the first question. And the second one is, has the determination of small growth villages initiated any new neighbourhood plans? I ask this because in Stibbard ward, I have two completely opposing views of local plans. One is for Ryborough, which has a local plan and are quite comfortable with being determined as a small growth village. The other one is Stibbard itself, which is completely the opposite. They are completely opposed to the definition of small growth villages. And moreover, I'm having some difficulty in explaining to them the benefits of a local plan. So it would be useful to understand where there are any other small growth villages determined by this Act that have, if initiated the preparedness of a local neighbourhood plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your question. I think because I'm not the expert in this space and I wouldn't like to give you an answer that I couldn't evidence, would it be an idea that the portfolio come and talk to you, or perhaps we can arrange a follow-up briefing on the local plan where you can ask questions? Would that be appropriate?
I think that is an option. How would you feel about that?
Yeah, that is a good option because the policy committee and Built Heritage hasn't met for a while because of the situation outside of our control. I understand that the response has been received from Mr. Dean, but from what I can see, it doesn't change the determination of small growth villages, which is a particular concern in some areas.
Right. So if I'm hearing you correctly, it'd be a good idea to have a follow-up briefing for the local plan as it stands, and also where you can ask questions of that kind of ilk. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yes, that would be acceptable.
If I could, Chair, in terms of your specific question, Councillor, I think you said how many were there.
Yeah.
So there are, according to our website, there are 15 neighbourhood plans. So if you go to the North Norfolk District Council website and search for neighbourhood plans, it comes up with a page. It lists all of the neighbourhood plans on there.
Does it? Okay.
And you can go into each of the plans from our website. So I would, if you wish to do some investigation work yourself in terms of where those plans are and where they may be useful to your other parishes that are either interested or expressing concern, that probably would be a really useful place to start, if that's helpful.
Thank you. That deals with the first part of the question. The second part of the question is how many have been initiated as a result of the determination of small growth villages?
I don't have that level of detail to hand, but we can find that out for you.
I think the point that emerges out of that is that that's a really good example of where that particular comment could be metric related.
Yeah.
So in other words, however many was that have already been through the process, how many are actually in progress would be a good way of presenting that information, because that would then tell all of us where it says promoting continuing via discussion with various towns and councils. That's a generic, very general statement, but I think to have a one line there which says this number has achieved local neighbourhood plans, and this number are engaged in the process.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have one other question, if I may.
Go on.
On page page 17, item 31. This whole question of mobile infrastructure is a significant issue in the rural parish councils, and I see that work has started in gathering the information in order to determine the correct approach to the suppliers in order to improve this. What would be useful would be this appears to be a process that has no end. So I would, and I understand that, but I think it would be useful to understand some kind of timing around the conclusion of the collection of the information in order to go forward.
I'm going to pass this to officers, but from my knowledge, the information has been collected. I know that you've been dealing with this as well, haven't you, Councillor Holiday? So it's a kind of, we've got the information. I know actually the MP is going to be presenting in Parliament, I think, about this today. So again, I'm not the expert on this subject, but what we can do is we can get a written response from Councillor Toy, if that's okay with you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That would answer my question, because I'm being asked a question. Great, lot going on. When's it going to happen?
And I'll refer to Officer Hems as well.
Sorry, Councillor Holiday, did you want to come in and comment on that? Because I can see your finger poised.
Well, 2 points actually. If I'd known the MP was speaking in Parliament, that would have been really helpful. Really helpful to know that, because I've been trying to get something to him. So that I'm sorry not to have heard that till today. And the other, we've spoken, Councillor Toy and I think he's about a month away from producing his evidence base. But I don't know how many other people are inputting into it. And I've just had another email today about lack of provision in one of my parishes. So I don't quite know where and how he's collating it. But he said he was about a month away. But what he's going to do with the data when he's collected it, I don't know. I haven't had that information.
Mr. Blatcher, I think you have a response.
I understand the public concern and members' concern about this, but this is the same issue in terms of the banking hubs. We can have influence. It's not in our direct gift to deliver against this outcome. We absolutely know that as a rural area, we are disadvantaged in terms of this infrastructure. It is a market solution. They respond to market pressures, and as a rural area, we are disadvantaged in that respect. There have been a number of interventions by national and local government to try and address this deficit, but it isn't wholly within our gift. And so I think we absolutely should be articulating this. We need to look at ourselves in terms of our planning processes, because there have been examples where masts have been proposed and for landscape reasons or community concerns, health concerns sometimes, that those masts have been refused in this district. And at the same time, people are commenting that mobile infrastructure and broadband infrastructure isn't robust enough. But ultimately, this isn't in our gift to deliver directly. We can only seek to lobby and influence. And we're in the same position in that respect as Norfolk County Council, who have had a similar digital infrastructure, a digital champion. But we haven't cracked this issue, and that is to do with market economics.
Come back on that.
No, I understand. I've been in extensive discussions with Openreach's chief executive about this, so I know the picture. But and I know it's not within our gift. I think we could be more. I think we should be more joined up. I know we've started to join up, but we're still probably not joined up enough. And I don't know whether we're getting all the information to be joined up. But without the basic information, you're not going to get anywhere if you try to lobby. And I just think there's the 26 million investment in fibre, but it's not coming to us. And it's, there's no way to push your villages up the priority list, is what I'm told. But if you haven't got fibre, I'm fibre as well as digital. Your options are Starlink or a leased line, which is £400 a month for a minimum of 60 months. So that's an awful lot to pay for fast internet access when your next door, your next village along might have FTTP already. So it's really, really inequitous. I don't think we're getting that point across actually quite as we should.
Can I suggest that you talk to Councillor Toy and have that conversation with councillor Toy, so he can properly understand your views and probably give you a little bit more information upon that.
I think we are seeing a continuation of a process that's been going on for a long time. I go back to a program called Better Broadband for Norfolk. That was driven by the county council and supported by this council as well. And of course, the standards that we were dealing with then in terms of coverage and capacity is very different. But we are in a moving situation here. But it is a fact of life that metropolitan, the city, the urban areas will always get that kind of infrastructure ahead of rural areas, because that is very much market driven, and they are the people. Norfolk County Council didn't put any broadband, any transmitters in of themselves, nor has this council. We have contributed to the funding of that. So the hands and delivery, the hands are in terms of delivery are very much those of the suppliers in the marketplace. So we are where we are, I think, with that. Councillor Hankins, you had a point.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, look, I understand it's not within our gift, but what is within our gift is to, from the information that's collected, to prioritise the areas that are the worst affected, i.e. zero, in order to contact any suppliers and so on. Thank you.
And I believe that work is going on.
I think the issue comes back to exactly the same point that we were talking about. You can prioritise, of course, and you can present your shopping list to the suppliers, but the delivery of that shopping list will be down to those suppliers. So your point is valid, but unfortunately it falls into that same kind of, we don't have our handle on that particular lever to say that this area should be done ahead of that area. That's a market, that's a supplier driven. I think we do have a role in having a good, effective dialogue with that marketplace. And I think that's a challenge. And I see some reactions to that as a challenge, but however, it shouldn't stop the county council, shouldn't stop the district councils, tier 1 and tier 2, exercising whatever influence they can on behalf of residents.
And just to add to that, when we have our mayor in place, I think that would be a great thing to lobby the mayor for as well. I mean, perhaps they will have a better influence, but I remember Councillor Toy saying at Cabinet that it's not just one operator, it's hundreds across, but the evidence-based report is absolutely important, and we can use that in any lobbying.
I think we will have to wait and see whether the mayor has that kind of influence or not. But I think the process will be the same. Whether they were more effective in delivering that, we'll have to wait and see. Councillor Beattie.
The problem I've come across is in trying to contact these people is actually getting somebody who can speak to on a regular basis. And that's the hardest. That's not making the contact. You make a contact, you'll get to speak to somebody for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. All of a sudden, no more emails, telephone numbers go dead. What do? I mean, how can you tackle this when you're coming up against this silliness all the time? And it's not, and OpenReach is one of the worst for it, absolute worst.
Yep. Right. Okay. Any other questions? Any other comments? Right. Okay. Well, the recommendation is that Open and Scrutiny Committee is asked to consider the report and make any recommendations to Cabinet. I'm not sure that I've heard a formal recommendation. I think there's some that you will take back in terms of to Cabinet members, Councillor Brown being one, Councillor Toy being another, to come back to this committee with a reply. Is that right?
I think that's within the gift of the committee to decide if they want that piece of work to happen. For example, the briefing, that might be a better recommendation from the committee to Cabinet, that there's a further briefing on the update of the local plan, that kind of thing, and neighbourhood plans perhaps.
What's your view? What do you want?
I would recommend, Mr. Chairman, that in relation to the small growth villages and that information, that recommendation for information that I've made goes forward.
For a briefing. Councillor Holiday.
So I see that the planning policy meeting's been cancelled for next, was it this week? It seems very unfortunate, actually, given that we've got the local plan that's just come back for discussion. Is it possible to resuscitate it? Because you could cover that. Because there's quite a lot on the small growth villages.
My understanding is that it was cancelled because we didn't have a letter. And so we weren't able to place that on the agenda. I would imagine now that we've had the inspector's letter that Mr. Williams will be giving consideration to timely rearranging of that meeting so that an update can be provided, but I'm happy to take that away.
Would you be content with that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, that letter was only received yesterday. So
That's my point.
it's very new.
Otherwise,
The team have got to work on it, as I understand it, in order to fully understand the implications, in order to present to the policy committee.
That's correct. That's why I think Mr. Williams needs the time to reflect on the content of the letter, which he did share with you all yesterday. The team, the planning policy team, need a period of time to reflect and respond or develop a response and prepare an agenda for the working party.
yes. Yeah, I think there is a danger there of cutting across, I think, that accountability through the Planning Policy and Built Heritage Working Group. The other thing that concerns me is that I think that we are where we are with regard to the inspector's findings and his recommendations, and we will have to run with those if we want to see the plan come to fruition in the way that he has agreed. And I wouldn't want to set up something that would cut across that and counter that.
No, I share your concerns in that regard, Chair. If Councillor Hankins wants an update as to the information on the neighbourhood plans in terms of which have been completed through the process and which are live in the process, because these are instigated by communities, they're not instigated by ourselves. Each community chooses to move forward and be designated a local plan area, a neighbourhood plan area, which largely reflects parish boundaries. And then there's quite a long process of public engagement and policy development, and it concludes with a referendum at a parish level. We have completed that process with a number of communities, but I think the full list that is on the website is a mixture of those where the process has been completed and plans have been adopted, and others where the process is in train at this moment in time. And we have said, in terms of the context of any local government reorganisation or reorganisation, that we would, or reform, sorry, that we do see as the planning authority, there is merit in more neighbourhoods or parishes considering the value of a neighbourhood plan in the context of a much larger geography covered by a unitary authority.
Okay, thank you. You comfortable with that? Does anybody else have a recommendation that they'd like to put forward?
Should we have a report for next month's ONS on the connectivity? Because that would time quite well, would it, for Councillor Toy? If he's about a month away from collating his results.
We can make a.
We can request it.
We can, are you proposing that as a recommendation?
Yes, could you take that as a recommendation? That we explore the data that he's got at our meeting next month?
Just to, yes. You're reading my mind.
I think it's a question of whether you would be content for that to be an informal request and just note the report, or whether you would like that worded and ask for a seconder and voted on as a formal recommendation.
It's tricky, that one. If you want it to come back, does it not have to be a formal recommendation?
If it's a formal recommendation, then there's a definite expectation. I think the difficulty is, officers and members don't know where exactly that is at the moment.
I mean, we will be discussing the work programme later in the agenda, and we might deal with it by way of that. So without going down the route of a formal recommendation on this particular matter, we could pick it up, and if that's what the committee wants to do. Councillor Penfold.
Well, I think that's very sensible, your suggestion there. So I would be happy with that.
Okay. So if there are no formal recommendations in relation to this report, can I have a proposer and a seconder that you accept and note the report? I've got Councillor Heinrich, Councillor Boyle, and a show of hands, please. That's unanimous. Thank you very much indeed. That's item 10 completed. Item 11 is the Cabinet Work Programme. That's the pages 21 to 26. Thank you both very much indeed. I don't know, are you staying for this one or not? No?
I can do.
Right, we got the work programme before us. Does anybody have any questions in relation to that? Any comments? No? Are you happy to note that? Right, okay. No objectors to noting that report. That's item 11. Item 12 is the overview and scrutiny action tracker, pages 27 to 32. So this is the tracker that we've had updated, and it's in a slightly different format, but essentially the information is there with regard to where we are on those recommendations that have been made going back to July last year. And the most recent one was April of this year. Anybody have any questions in relation to that? That's the holiday.
I don't know if it's appropriate to ask it as a review of a tracker, but it'd be very interesting to see more detail of the people services review redesign that seems to have commenced recently and is mentioned on a couple of occasions.
So this is which page?
This is first page, which is page 27.
Thank you for the question. So that will be updated in the homelessness rough street, the report that I bring back to you, but the restructure has started and the outreach work is actually ongoing. But I can bring that back in the report that I'm bringing it to you. Is it October, September? When am I coming back to you? I think it's got down as July, but I think we agreed that it was going to be with the new strategy, the homelessness strategy that comes through from government, which is September, October.
So just to add, we'll have a meeting with Karen Hill and Nikki and maybe yourself next week to decide on the timeline for the update on the task and finish group outcomes and the homelessness strategy, which being prepared. We were hoping to do them at the same time, but the strategy is sort of taking longer. So yeah, we just want to try and align those and make sure that the committee get the best outcomes. So we may split them and bring the outcomes earlier. So they're penciled in for July at the moment, but I need to sort of firm that up with officers around the best approach to make sure that the committee get the best out of that. So I'll report back to the next meeting, hopefully, on the scheduling of that.
You content with that?
That's very sensible, thank you. Page 31, it says an update is required on the prevention of provision for victims of domestic abuse.
Okay, so I can give you an update on this, that our housing providers, registered providers, have actually passed their DAHA accreditation. So they are putting in steps for domestic abuse cases. So we have encouraged registered providers to do that. Again, that will come through with the task and finish group recommendations. The problem with when you have a checklist, it's kind of preempting the report that I'm going to bring you. So it's kind of doubling the workload of officers if we're asking, right, okay, require that. It's when that comes to you in a report would be better, a more detailed report.
Absolutely, but you could have popped that in there. So to be reported in September or something, and that would have been completely valid.
Perhaps
I
that's
think.
part of the conversation that we can have.
I think there is some there's some work that we as a committee can do, and I think cabinet members and officers may well be able to contribute to that process in terms of just being having a bit more information there where it says ongoing or so forth. It would be useful to have some description there of what is it that's ongoing, and any meaningful information, if you like, that would help us to track where that is in terms of progress, and if it's coming back to the committee, when that might be likely to happen. Thing is about closing the loops on recommendations that we've made and making sure that those loops are complete. Councillor Penfold.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I'm just mindful of workloads here, and I do think there is just your point, Councillor Holliday's point, perhaps some cross-referencing that could come into this, because the information is often available in cabinet reports or portfolio holder reports, I should say. So whether we can refer to those in this document, so that we do a bit of work there, we seek it. We're asking a lot to come to us. There is work for us to do as well when that information is already there, I think. So, or it could be a simple transfer of information across, perhaps, but don't need to reinvent the wheel when that's already there. Just a couple of other points. I wonder whether we have heard back from the Police and Crime Commissioner or not. And on page 32, the last point there, we discussed previously the Integrated Care Board. I think all the information perhaps in the outcomes achieved column is probably should be shifted across to the recommendation column, it seems to me, and perhaps in the outcomes achieved column, I know Officer Blatch obviously has sent that letter in. We'll obviously await a response to that, but that letter I think was excellent. I think we all agreed on that, and perhaps that should be in the outcomes column.
It would be useful if it was noted there.
Yep,
I agree. I just coming back to your first point on the Police and Crime Commissioner, I think Officer Jordan has the latest on that.
Yeah, we have heard back, and they will be attending the September meeting.
So
we could pop that in the outcomes achieved column.
So I think the other point that I think you made, which was that we as either individuals or as a committee probably need to spend a little more time on these, on this tracker, just making sure that those recommendations, as I said, that have been made are making progress or have been completed. And we then have a much more accurate picture of where we are in following those recommendations. Councillor Fredericks.
Chair, I agree with you. I think putting any more stress on staff to come up with outcomes that are already available, I think is what is that.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. I think,
Yeah.
I mean, it might be that, you know, for committee might need to be referred to where that information is available. You don't need to repeat it again. It's up to us then to find it. It's easy to find. It's just about cross-referencing that. So, you know, this is, please see so-and-so report or a link here, rather than having to type it all in again or put it all in here. It's relatively easy for us to find it if it exists. We're not just doubling up your workload.
Can I make a suggestion? Sorry, Chair, if I may. So we've got the OPCC coming in, OPCC, yeah, Office of Police Crime Commissioner coming in. When you have a recommendation about domestic abuse, do you have in that previous meeting, are you going to be formulating some questions to ask the Police Crime Commissioner?
Well, the format for that has yet to be discussed. So I think we have to be mindful that we've had a change of police and crime commissioner. So the last time we saw the police and crime commissioner, I well remember him explaining his 6 pillars. Not pillars you sleep on, but pillars propping up his plan, his strategy, if you like. I doubt if that's something that the current police and crime commissioner would have much knowledge of or would be perhaps in tune with. But one topic that I would have thought that would feature heavily was the current police and crime commissioner's strategy, which was consulted on a few months ago. And so I would have thought that would form one key line of questioning. And of course, the other key lines of questioning will be those matters which we as ward members are aware of as particularly prevalent in our areas that we might want to hear more about. Those are usually the kind of that's the format of that, but that will be to be decided.
On that, Mr. Chairman, sorry to interrupt. It might be worth Councillor Fredericks knowing that we do have, can't always make it, but we do have a pre-committee meeting to discuss questions as a committee. So that's quite helpful in that regard.
I think also, of course, we do have, do we have 2 representatives on the police and crime panel? Or is it 1? I know we have representation. And sometimes that's another source of useful information in terms of feeding back on what's being done. So, okay, any other questions on the action tracker? I think that this is something that we all have to just spend a bit more time on, ensuring that we understand where these recommendations are in the course of their progress. Okay, if there are no other comments on that, if you're happy to note that, then we move to the work programme. I think item 13 is our work programme, and we've also got, I think, I think we need to probably have some discussion with regard to how we populate that in the future. So the work programme as it's laid out, Officer Jordan, do you have any comments that you would like to make in relation to those?
Just by way of update, I've already mentioned that the Police and Crime Commissioners confirmed they'll attend in September. Anglian Water will be invited to attend the June meeting if possible, as this agenda is currently quite light, if members are content with that. And just to follow on from some earlier discussion, for homelessness task and finish group update is planned for July, with pre-scrutiny of the homelessness strategy to come to the October meeting. And a template has been prepared to help members scope new items that are added to the work programme. I think that may have already been sent out via email to members for input and comment.
Okay, thank you for that. Any comments on the work programme? How's the holiday?
I was wondering, given that June is very light, whether we could bring forward the LGA, any possible feeding into the LGA process, given that the timescale for that is very short. That's a future item on page 35.
Sorry, which item was it? Sorry.
There's a future item on page 35, local government reorganisation,
Oh, yeah.
feed into the local government reorganisation process. And I wondered if we could bring that to June, so that, because you've got to have the decision made by September. And if we were
Yes.
going to have any input into it, would be a good place to
Yeah.
take it.
Thank you, Chair. I think that's why I was asked to attend this morning's meeting. It would be premature in June. I've come straight to this meeting from the feedback from MHCLG officials delivered online to Norfolk partners this morning. We didn't receive any written feedback subsequent to the submission of the interim plans on the 21st of March until Friday the 2nd of May. They then updated their written feedback on Tuesday the 6th of May, and they've had a online Teams meeting with Norfolk partners at 9 a.m. this morning. There is a lot of preparatory work ongoing for the 6 district partners who are promoting 3 unitary council models moving forward. There is a procurement of a strategic partner to assist in that process. That is out currently for a procurement process. And there are a series of work streams that are being established with officers from a number of themed areas to develop the narrative and to consider models of alternative public service delivery and reform, which will be stood up from the first week in June. I was proposing, after the briefing this morning, to write to all members suggesting how this, or advising how this was going to be moved forward in the coming weeks. I'm not sure there will be anything substantive to share at your meeting in June, given that work is only really starting at that time. I was proposing a town and parish council briefings probably the last 2 weeks of June to provide some progress alongside, and that I was going to outline that in the email to all members today. I think we then need to stage a workshop briefing for you in July, and then there would be a formal special meeting of council which will be delivered to all of the 6 partners to the 3 council proposal in a date in September, and that's being coordinated through the Democratic Services and Monitoring Officers to try and agree a date again for the same week as was the case with the sign off of the interim plans back in March. So I absolutely recognise the members' interest in this space, but we haven't had any definitive information to share with you until the conversation with MHCLG officials at 9 a.m. this morning. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Mr. Black. I think the context of this is that we have 4 months effectively in which to draw together what on the face of it looked like some fairly disparate set of proposals. That was the early initial proposals, and I think there was a recognition that there was quite a lot of work that would need to be done to populate those proposals, test those proposals for viability in a number of aspects, a number of ways. That's a lot of work to be done, and I think there's also a at least an aspiration to try and bring together that range of proposals and those organisations into perhaps a closer alignment than we currently have. I think the thinking on that is that it is probably better if we can propose something which has some considerable consensus rather than having a number of proposals going forward of which there is only partial consensus. And so the leadership of that and the planning and delivery of that is a significant task to be done in that relatively short period of time. And I think it would be the interest of this committee to understand how that's likely to be done over the next 4 months.
I agree with the comments you've expressed. I would just say that this timescale is not of this or other councils' makings in Norfolk. It is prescribed by His Majesty's government, and we are moving very quickly to provide or develop proposals based on evidence that will consider a multitude of issues in terms of any geography or business case. The government have laid out their criteria, and the conversation that we've had this morning doesn't take us much beyond those criteria in terms of the criteria which was shared with you in the letter from the Secretary or the Minister of State, Jim McMahon, on the 5th of February, when the timescale was laid out for the interim and full submission proposals. So the feedback that we've got doesn't deviate very much from the criteria. So obviously there was criteria around a population threshold of around 500,000, and alternatives can be proposed if they are suitably evidenced within any submissions, and that position has been restated. There's an ambition around public service reform and efficiency, and that needs to be reflected upon. Given the funding position of Norfolk, which is below the average population per head spend in a number of areas, I don't know the capacity to realise efficiencies, but that needs to be considered. And there were a series of work streams that are being taken forward involving Section 151 officers and finance officers, asset leads, HR leads, as well as subject leads around adult social care, early intervention and prevention, children's services, waste, planning and housing. And we have recently been asked to nominate staff to serve on those work streams, and they will be briefed next week and then stood up from June. And it was after today's conversation that I was going to prepare a briefing note for you outlining those processes.
Okay, thank you for that. So the proposal is that we move that LGR item to next month. Is that something that you would wish to see, or do you think that's too early, or do you want to rely on Councillor Penfold and then Councillor?
I mean, I think Officer Blatch said that is too early. I think that is too early, given what I've just heard from Officer Blatch. And I might just might I throw in a different proposal as part of this, because I think we are quite light in June. but we're quite heavy in July. Just going back to my asking for the HAS update, which we've had on the agenda for a while, and back to our recommendations tracker, which was our previous item. It does say there that we would get the HAS update, particularly around evaluation, at a meeting prior to September 25. So given that July is pretty busy, whether that could come into June is a possibility. So that links us back to page 27, our recommendations tracker, the top one there, which we've got to try and fit in before September. So I would propose that, and I think take Officer Blatch's advice that June is too early for us to consider LGR. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Houston.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there's such scant information. There's just no point. I think September. Well, we don't have a meeting in August, do we? So September's probably
Not
going to
normally.
be. No,
Not
well,
normally.
no.
It'll be for the committee to decide whether this year, given that there are some important issues that need to be, that will be a decision for the committee to make nearer the time.
Right. Okay. Well, I certainly think it needs to be delayed certainly till August, if not September, because if we're not going to have the information, there's just no point.
Sorry, I don't want to be misunderstood. We have to submit with other councils a submission by the 26th of September. So there will be a report to full council on LGR for your sign off, I think in the week of the 15th of September, but that needs to be confirmed. It was our intention to deliver you a workshop either within or outside of the Over and Scrutiny Committee process to outline or to advise you of the work that had been done around LGR in a date in July. Haven't been able to fix that yet because we haven't got a strategic partner involved, and we haven't as yet agreed a geography. Those options are still being considered on the basis of a series of evidence. So the government's criteria was for new councils of 500,000 population. Norfolk has a population of 930,000. There is the work that was done at the interim stage felt that 3 roughly equal sized authorities, one in the east, one in the west, and a greater Norwich area, but the geographies of those areas hadn't been defined. Was the best response that Norfolk could give in the context of the government's laid out criteria in terms of geography, community of place, the economic geography, housing markets, landscape, all of those sort of issues. And 6 of the 7 districts in Norfolk felt that was the strongest model in terms of delivering public services moving forward. That position already stretches the government's criteria because it does involve some change of district boundaries, particularly in the Greater Norwich area. Doesn't have to elsewhere. But that may raise, in terms of equity of population, the work that Deloitte did suggested that perhaps the west of the district could be in a Western authority, but the boundary wasn't. It was just a suggestion. There was no proposal. There is detailed analysis being undertaken at the moment across a range of data sets that would seek to fix that geography. Right. If you move towards the model that was promoted by South Norfolk Council, that proposed Broadland, South Norfolk, Norwich, and Great Yarmouth forming one authority, and on population, Breckland, Kings Lynn and West Norfolk Borough Council and the North Norfolk District forming another. That's very difficult for some of our geography because, Hovton, Stalham, and North Horsham, they look very strongly to Norwich, and indeed, as does Cromer and Sheringham in terms of high order health provision. So those mappings of those health authority or acute hospitals doesn't comfortably sit with that geography. So the work that's now being done is almost taking that back to a baseline position and building up again to see what those geographies would be. But if the South Norfolk proposal did use established district building blocks, which is what the government criteria has a preference for, unless there is a strong case that can be made. And those are the thought processes that are being taken forward now in terms of testing some of those assumptions.
So, I mean, in the context of this committee, I mean, obviously we've got a work programme and things to consider in that work programme, but what you're going to be bringing to this committee at some point is going to be a pretty beefy document, I would have thought.
It was going to be, that's why a workshop for all members is probably better, because otherwise I think your colleagues outside of this committee, they've also got a representational role in their communities. And so it was, I think there was a view that it would be better if we could do a workshop that all members could attend.
So, sorry, Chair, but I mean, what do you consider, having had that all members briefing, would come to overview and scrutiny, so that we can take a view on?
Right, I didn't know I was
sorry, I was
advised yesterday that there was a wish to discuss this today.
Sorry.
And
okay.
Don't please don't apologise, because I understand that there has been a frustration amongst the chief executives and leaders that, you know, the 21st of March is now a long way away, and we haven't really made any significant progress because we haven't had feedback from government. That came to us last week, and the workshop, well, not workshop, the briefing or the conversation was this morning. And so we could have wasted a lot of resource thrashing around in the dark without some definitive advice or response. And so there has been preparatory work. We haven't been sitting still, but we haven't got anything that is definitive yet that can be shared with you.
Sure. Okay. Sorry, Chair. It's just trying to get a picture of where this might sit. You know, your comment about August and the meeting and how it might sit in.
There is a lot of work to be done, and alongside that, there is progress towards forming the mayoral combined authority with Norfolk and Suffolk. The district involvement hasn't been significant in that as yet. But in terms of housing markets, strategic planning and everything, there is a desire for us to become more involved, and we are having to resource that at the same time. So, and, you know, we want to deliver our existing services. We've had the conversation this morning about the corporate plan ambitions. So we are juggling a lot of balls at the moment. And also in terms of health and well-being, we will be moving towards time when people will take time off for holidays. And so, and it's our busiest time of the year in terms of our core service provision for meeting the needs of our tourism visitors. So we are trying to manage all of those situations in a way that is structured and measured, so that we are covering all of those bases.
So with that workload, do you consider that within the LGR there are elements that could be extracted to come into here, or is it one composite sort of situation?
I need to take that away, if I may, and come back to you and discuss that with the leader of the council. As I say, there is thought being given to an engagement strategy and a comm strategy in terms of asking our population what they want from public service reform moving forward. But this isn't something that is being driven in Norfolk.
No,
it's being driven external to Norfolk. And we have to hope that the government understands our place. You know, it's not wrong to say after 50 years, is the structure the right one? You know, technology's moved on, public way people access public services has moved on, but the geography of Norfolk is very large. And, you know, what is the delivery mechanism? If we go for larger authorities, is there area provision? Are there area committees? Are there area offices maintained? We need to work through all of those questions.
Okay. Thank you very much, Chair. Sorry about that. It just sort of.
Would it be a suggestion to have the workshop first and then decide what elements you want to discuss? Because otherwise we're in danger of kind of duplicating work. And as Mr. Blatch says, they're all completely flat out, and not to forget devolution, which is going to come in. So if we could do the workshop briefing to all members and then perhaps have the discussion after that.
I think that's a key point of principle here. I think actually, is this a sufficiently big, encompassing topic that we would want all members to be involved with to a very large extent? And would we, as a committee, if we were looking for something on top of that or in addition to that, would that be a helpful thing to do? I think that there are dangers of duplication and workload management. But I think what we are effectively about this morning is having an understanding of what that process, what the structure is likely to look like over the next 4 months, and how best can this committee play into, add value, if at all, to that process. And that will govern, I think, the degree to which we will formally be engaged with it.
So I think that's really helpful, Chair. So on the basis that I was going to lay out a roadmap for you, all members today, following the conversation of this morning, I was going to lay out that roadmap through till the submission date on the 26th of September. I think it might be that I need to take away and discuss with the leader and the monitoring officer whether we bring forward the workshop, which I think we had tentatively proposed would be in the first week of July, to possibly the 3rd or 4th week in June. And then if we deliver that workshop for you, if there are issues that would be particularly of interest to this committee, they could be discussed at your July meeting, which is scheduled. And that would allow us to take those issues away and share with partners for work to be undertaken or those issues to be explored further in the 6 weeks during the latter half of July and August. I think that's probably the best I can offer you.
Does that set your mind at rest with regard to how we treat this potential item on our agenda?
Yes, I mean, we have to add value to any discussion, and otherwise it's a waste of everyone's time. And obviously we don't want to duplicate. I'm a bit concerned that a workshop or a briefing is very one-dimensional, and you're not going to get the feedback and the sort of discussion about points that you get in this forum. And I also get the point that this forum is quite selective, and you're not going to get the feedback from the rest of the members. But I'm a bit concerned that our views aren't necessarily inputting as much into this process as could possibly be, and I don't know how we best achieve that. And I don't know if scrutiny is the best place to do that. So we can certainly start with the workshop, but if it might be that there has to be feedback from everybody rather than just this group.
I'm certainly not clear in my mind how scrutiny can best play into that big picture. And I think to probably, yes, just coming back to the work programme, the proposal that Councillor Penfold has made, that we move the homelessness task and finish group recommendations, that one further forward into June, is that?
The North Horsham Heritage Action Zone.
Sorry?
Not the homelessness.
Oh, right.
But I don't know if
I don't
know if that is possible, because officers were being asked to do that to work programme. When that was agreed to, we didn't have a further extension of the UK Shared Prosperity Fund and Rural England Prosperity Fund. And if that money is to be committed during this 12-month period, to make an additional demand and bring that forward by 3 months is an additional pressure on that team. And you know, they provided you with at your last meeting a very detailed report as to how they've spent the monies through UK SPF and the Rural England programme in the last 3 years. We were only asked to sign the memorandum of agreement with government for the spend for this 12-month extension on the 1st of May. So they now need to be rolling out that work programme, and that does involve a lot of community engagement and engagement with businesses. And so that's the same people you're asking to bring forward that report. I'm not saying they can't.
No.
What I'm saying is I don't know where they've got to in terms of that evaluation.
Perhaps we could ask that question.
I'm happy to ask that question.
Because we were expecting it before September, as it says there. So that would have been either June or July. Yeah, probably July. So, but absolutely fine. If it's not, if it can't be June, then of course
leave it as it is for now.
Leave it as it is for now, and if we can, fantastic. But
thing is to get it to your June meeting. That's just 2 weeks away in terms of preparation of the agenda.
Yeah.
Chair, and so with the homelessness task and finish group, we've had that conversation with Emma Denny
over in regarding strategy
about pushing that forwards to when we can present a whole.
Yeah.
So that'd be good. But I really want to echo Mr. Latch's comments that the staff are absolutely flat out at the moment with working on LGR and Devo. It's not to say that you can't ask
Okay.
them, but
Okay, yeah, understood. Councillor Boy, you had your hand up a while ago.
That's all right, I did, but my question's been answered now, I think.
Right,
with all
fine.
the discussion,
And-
thank you.
And Councillor Holliday, you had your hand up as well as yours. Was that what your query was?
I mean, June looks very light, and if we bring Anglia Water forward, that would make it more worthwhile driving across Norfolk. But it's a shame that everything's being pushed back.
Yeah.
For reasons that are not in our control.
Okay, okay. Councillor Cushing.
With your permission, it's actually not on the work programme, but I would like to ask a question on the timing of this meeting. Is that permissible? When we agreed the timetable this year, we obviously moved the start date from this meeting back from 9:30 to 10 o'clock. And I don't know why that was done, because it wasn't highlighted to us that that was going to change. I think we voted it through, but I don't think nobody actually explained that was going to be the case. Speaking for myself, often we have 3-hour meetings here, and if we're starting at 9:30 and finishing at 12:30, that's fine. But for those of us who live at the other end of the districts, we've got a good half an hour journey homes, if more than that. That means if we start at 10 o'clock, we finish these meetings till 1 o'clock. So by the time we get back home, we're going to be pushing into the afternoon. So I personally, and I'd be interested in what my colleagues think, but I would rather we went back to starting at 9:30. So.
Councillor Hindrick.
Thank you, Chairman. I would absolutely concur. We found with the Development Committee meeting last week that starting at 10 means we were struggling to finish by 1:30. And that was a relatively straightforward agenda. I'm looking at potentially 6 to 8 items on the next one. We could be here all afternoon, and that is just not feasible. It's not fair on members, and it's certainly not fair on the public. And the Development Committee, you have to sit around waiting for us to get to the item they're interested in. So I would far rather go back to 9:30. Much more suitable. Thank you.
So yes, before you, Officer Jordan, you respond, please.
I would just say that was something that was voted through at full council, so it would need to go as a recommendation by yourself as chair, then reviewing scrutiny to the next full council meeting.
Okay, that's the process that we would need to follow.
I think so.
Okay, so does anybody else want to contribute to that proposal? I assume that amount proposal, and I assume that you would second it. Does anybody else want to speak on that proposal? Okay, we've got a proposal and a second. Can we have a show of hands for changing the time from 10 o'clock to 9:30? That looks unanimous. So that will be a recommendation from our work programme that our meetings will revert back to 9:30 starts. Okay. Anybody else got any comments in respect to the work programme at this stage? I think just coming back to the question of how we populate the next couple of months, I think there are a few things that need to crystallise a bit further forward before we know how best we can plan the work programme. And I intentionally didn't comment on the August being a vacant month, because I genuinely believe that we probably as a committee need to be responsive to whatever might come down the track in terms of what needs to be processed. And until we understand a bit more about how we will handle LGR within the organisation and how members will be a part of that, I'm not sure that I would want to form a hard view about how this committee should partake in that process. I think we need to leave that open. Right. Okay, so the page 37 was the guidance on the work programme. I think we probably dealt with that. And there was a template, wasn't there, that Officer Denny had prepared. I'm not sure whether that has been circulated.
If it hasn't been circulated already, it will be this week or early next week.
And so we should discuss that perhaps next month.
Yes.
Right. Okay. Anybody else got any comments with regard to the work programme?
Was it agreed that we were asking Anglian Water to come forward from July into June? That was mentioned, wasn't it? Somebody mentioned it.
Is that what you would like?
Well, it just seems sensible if it's possible that would give a bit more meat to June.
Would you like that? I think that would be a rebalance of the work programme, because July does look pretty heavy and June looks pretty light. And if Anglian Water can respond to that.
Yep, I'll have to propose that if everybody else is.
You comfortable with that? Yep. Okay. So we will pick that up if we, as an action to contact Anglian Water to invite them to June if they possibly can, rather than July. Any others? It's a good point, that. Thank you. Any others? No? Okay. Thank you very much indeed. Right. That concludes our agenda today. Thank you very much indeed. I formally close the meeting.
Mr. Chairman, before you bang that gavel down, if I may, members may not know that don't have well publicised, but this is actually going to be your last meeting as our chairman, as you have decided to stand down after 6 years, and indeed actually standing down from the committee as well. And I don't think we should let that moment pass. But thanking you for doing such a sterling job over that time. I think along with the development committee, I think it's one of the toughest committees to actually chair. And I think you've done it with grace and aplomb over all that time. And on occasions we might have had our moments, but they're always well intentioned in order to benefit the residents of our district. So I firmly, one of those, I'm sure I'm not the only one here, would actually like to thank you for what you've done.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. This committee only works by you as members supporting the chairman and supporting officers in the way that I hope that we have in the past few years. And so, yes, it has been for me for the past 6 years, and I believe that it is entirely right that we should have some new blood. And I think that, quite honestly, my workload has got to the point where I would value some relief from it. So yes, this will be my last meeting, sadly, in a way. But as you know, we have to be realistic about these things, and I have enjoyed the 6 years. I think we've achieved a number of worthy things, and I'm particularly pleased, I think, of the way in which we probably have brought the committee on in the past year or so. So I would just hope that we hold on to that and that we move forward in the way that we have moved in recent years. So thank you very much indeed for that. But Councillor Penfold.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And yes, may I just echo Councillor Cushing's words on behalf of our group to thank you for your 6 years of service and expertise and professionalism, and for me personally, as your vice chairman, very much welcomed your support and encouragement of me in that role. And sorry I haven't been able to attend all of our meetings, but I have appreciated it. So it's been a pleasure to serve as your vice chairman, but thank you on behalf of our group. Thank you.
Oh, well, thank you for that. And I certainly value the support and involvement of all the vice chairmen that I've had over the years. And certainly I believe that there is a vital role, an important role in the vice chair. And so thank you for that. Right. Okay. Well, let's close the meeting and move on, as they say. Thank you very much indeed for your input and attendance today. Thank you.